All right. I hope everybody can hear me here. My name is Sam Ashby. I'm the Director of Sales here at Domani Care. And we're happy that you're joining us. We wanted to show you how powerful the program is and how it works. And I'm going to be walking you through this demonstration so you can see exactly how it would work for your funeral home and your staff. Now, here at Domani Care, our purpose is to focus on the families you've served so you can focus on the families you're currently serving. So it's extremely powerful, and you're going to see that as I walk you through this process. But I just want to show you quickly a couple testimonials that are shared by funeral homes across the country, whether you're a 100-call firm or whether you're a couple thousand-call firm. And these are the same feelings you'll share as you begin using Domani Care at your funeral home or cemetery. Now, this is Jeannie from New Jersey, and she said, Domani Care provides the gift of aftercare coupled with continuing relationships that I've dreamed about for years. Having the interpersonal continued outreach with our families through Domani Care on meaningful dates, occasions, and just to check in captures the essence of true care and attention long after the funeral, making each person feel like they matter. Most importantly, the responses from our families have been overwhelmingly positive, making us even more grateful for partnering with Domani Care. And the increased Google reviews is an added bonus. I'm going to show you another one here. This is Scott Glover from Idaho. Since making the decision to add Domani Care to our aftercare programs, we eliminated the need for any other program. The Domani Care now covers the aspect of reaching out to families, freeing up time to allow us to work with new families. They have boosted our Google reviews, and families rant and rave over the communication and follow-up they receive. The Domani Care team is highly receptive to messages and instantly reaches out if there's any questions a family may have. Domani Care is the best in the game and would highly recommend them to anyone who wants to stand out from their competitors. So a couple really great testimonials from a couple of our partnered funeral homes across the country. And one of the things that we've learned about in this process is just how important the care of the funeral home is. And sometimes aftercare is an afterthought. And we wanted to make sure that that wasn't the case for any funeral home that we're partnered with. And that's why Domani Care was born, is why it's become so powerful, is we create loyal customers and loyal clients through our aftercare program through a variety of different ways. And I'm going to show you that as we go forward here. But lots of times funeral home owners just lose sight of maintaining their market share by trying to focus everything on growing their market share. And so we wanted to make sure that we're providing a service that is above and beyond what the person or family would expect. And this is why Domani Care was created. But the word domani itself is Italian, and it means tomorrow. And really, that's what we're trying to do for you and your funeral home is better prepare you for tomorrow, but most importantly, better equip your families for tomorrow's loss, and to make sure that they have the experience that they deserve and one that will help them heal in the most effective way. But this program, I want to stress too, is it's supposed to be an extension of these services that you and your team at the funeral home already provide to your families. In no way we're trying to replace anything that you already have. But you'll see that it perfectly fits in like a puzzle piece to what you're already doing. And I think we can all agree that funeral directors are special in the fact that they create a special bond with families as they serve them in the arrangement room. But what we found is that a couple of weeks after the service occurs, funeral directors have new families to help. And that's when we've seen the family's grief really begin to set in. And that's when we wanted to make sure that we reach out to them and see that they're doing okay. So let's talk about the communication process and what we have found to be the most effective. You can see in these three areas how inefficient they are by looking at these three numbers. But I'm sure you've experienced in your market trying to communicate with your families through direct mail or sending them a card in the mail is hard and expensive. And most everything you see in the mail nowadays is just junk. And I would say the same to be true about email. We're seeing less than 16% even open their emails now. And I'm sure it's because it's flooded with marketing and promotions and sales and things like that, like it is in mine. You know, marketing companies have gotten pretty savvy with their phone calls too, and even try to get a phone number that looks like yours. but we're seeing about 87% of phone calls go unanswered. And so when you look at those 3 minutes, it's just so inefficient. And so we had to come up with a better way to reach out, a more efficient way to reach out to your families, but also to maintain that personal touch. And this is why Domani Care utilizes texting. His only text messages has a current read rate of 98%. And not only 98%, but that's within the first 90 seconds of being sent. So pretty incredible statistic when you really look at it. But when you pull out your own cell phone, I want you to see how many unread text messages you have right now. Like mine, I'm sure if you have any, there are few that you have unread. And that's because of the few minutes that we've been talking here. It's definitely the preferred method of communication and the quickest way to get information when you need it. So I'm going to show you an example of this. If you'll go ahead and text the word Domani to this number, 801-893-5733. And I'm just going to give you just a second to be able to do that. And I'm going to show you the power of the experience of this message. And again, keep in mind that this is a message that's going to go out to one of your families that you and your funeral home just served a couple weeks ago. And this is the first message of just a few that's going to come onto your text thread, but it's coming to them at a time when their friends and families have gone back to their normal life and their grief is just setting in. And you're going to see this message come in behalf of the funeral director that served them. And I'll preface this too, that all the text messages that you will see come through on this text thread are customizable. And we're going to recommend some specific language that we've seen be effective across the country. But of course, everything can be easily adjusted per your preference. And if you go ahead and read that message, you'll notice that this message does come from an administrative individual, either an Elizabeth or Jennifer or Hannah. And that's because lots of times the funeral director is already texting the families. So we didn't want them to be confused about that. And that's why we had the name be consistent. So everyone at the funeral home knows that there's one person texting and all the directors know who's texting the families you serve. Does that make sense? It's a really simple process. And that's what's great about our program. That's really all the training that's necessary for the entire staff is, hey, everybody, Elizabeth is the one texting all the families after we serve them in the arrangement room, beginning with a couple weeks out of the service. And I'm going to take a minute to talk about it because you're going to continue to receive a series of messages on your cell that will come at significant periods of time throughout the year for that family. So you'll see a birthday text, you'll see an anniversary text a year after, a holidays text, and each one of those messages is again customized and personalized to that specific family. What we utilize here is Domani Care is offering a local 10-digit phone number. So this is how it's sent out to them. So the area code will match theirs. So it's coming from a local phone number so they recognize it. And they're all messages, personalized messages sent by humans. And this is what sets us apart. And this is what is the most important part of our program. And what I was talking about is keeping that personalization. What I mean by that is I think one of the first questions we get when a funeral home sees this is, man, this sounds amazing, but what happens if the family responds? We don't want to make sure and put more work on the funeral directors. They're already slammed in and of itself. We don't want to have them explain or respond to many families, and they have other families to take care of. And so what's great about our program is we have personal text monitors that are going to actually interact with the family. So there's an actual human behind every text message that's sent. So after that initial message sends out, if a family member responds, a live correspondent will pick up and have conversation with them. It's amazing. And the great thing about it is that all of this is recorded, so we can see the conversations. And once a month, we will give you detailed reporting, every single interaction, so you can see who responded, how they responded, as well as our response back to them. So you'll be able to see this dialogue and this connection between our live correspondents and your families and see how powerful this program and this interaction really is. But you also get dedicated account support. So there's somebody well-trained, designated to reaching out to your family specifically. But I'm going to show you just a quick case study of a small new funeral home, and they just served about 87 families the previous year. But you can imagine, with it being a new funeral home, it was very important to them to provide quality service and establish their name and brand. And so what we did is we actually went back and for every funeral home that comes on with us, we do what's called like a catch-up campaign or a kickstart campaign. And we'll go back a few months and we will gather all the families that you served over the past few months. And we will send that initial message that you just received, that first one. I wanted to show you some of the responses because the responses have been very wonderful, and it's been amazing to see the connection that we've made and show you how we respond to some of the messages that we get back. So this one, of course, we send that initial message. Hey, Mark, this is Jennifer with Nelson Family Mortuary. Lance asked me to reach out to you and let you know we're thinking about you today and wanted to check in and see how you were doing. We know how challenging these first days and weeks can be. Please let me know if there's anything we can do for you. Again, that's the initial message that's sent out a couple weeks out of the service. And they responded, thanks so much for reaching out. We appreciate your thoughts and your consideration. We also thank you for the fine manner in which you handled my mother's funeral, as well as my father's funeral a year ago. You guys are awesome. We appreciate all that you do. I would highly recommend you to anybody. If there's anything that we need, we will certainly reach out. So very heartfelt and great message to send out. Again, a lot of the messages are just short and sweet. All right, just powerful, short responses. Hey, we're honoring and remembering. Thank you for following up. But what we're also finding is that we're covering some loose ends, and this is what funeral home owners have just loved. So how this would work is that you would provide us with a point of contact at your funeral home that would take care of these items that obviously we can't take care of. So we would turn this over to that individual, and it's a very nice and seamless process in how it works. We'll either call the funeral director that served that family. In this case, this is what we did. They asked for a recommendation of a place that does a headstone. And we called Lance, who was the funeral director that served that family. And Lance gave us a response that we texted back to them within 10 minutes. So very, very powerful and quick and seamless is the process. Again, we are at this full time. We respond to these families. They're important to us just as they are important to you. But you get to take care of the families that are at hand in your funeral home at the time. We follow up with them after the fact and create loyal customers. And it's been incredible to see that process. But look at how powerful this text message platform is. Of those 87 text messages sent, 47 people responded. To do the math quickly, it's 54% response rate, which is absolutely amazing. And that's what we're seeing is not only a 98% read and open rate on these text messages, but we're seeing a nationwide average of 45 to 50% response rate, which is amazing. You won't see anything else like that out there. These are some of the messages that we'll be sending out to all of your families. Starting again with that initial checking in message, we will do a Google review text, which I'm going to talk about here on this next slide, a Christmas and holidays message, a birthday message, an anniversary of death message, and then an annual event invitation, which is obviously optional. But what we've seen obviously is a lot of funeral homes around the country do an annual event, whether it's a candlelight dinner or whatever the case may be at the end of the year. And you can customize a text message that will invite all the families that you served that previous year to that specific event, and or simply thank them for allowing you and your funeral home to serve them. So it's been a very powerful process there too, but you could save a lot of money in the process instead of spending a bunch to send out cards which you have no idea how to track. That's what's great about the texting platform and the technology that we have is we get to track everything. We know if they've read it, we know if they've responded. We can track all the statistical analysis of everything. So it's been great. Let's talk about and move forward here. But after that first message is sent, we actually send a direct link that's directly linked to your Google review page. So we will text them a link that's directly linked to your Google review page and ask them kindly fill out a Google review. And that's how effective and efficiently we've been able to build Google reviews along the process. Because of that live dialogue, there's no better way to capture Google reviews. And because of that, you can see here with all of our partnered funeral homes, 97% of them are ranked number one in their market on Google. But I'm going to show you here, just these are some actual Google reviews And the reason why we show a couple of these is how well trained our staff is in responding to your families. They're very well trained and know how to respond, because there's a certain language that is obviously to be used for these families. But in this case, Chelsea, her husband had committed suicide. But you can see how heartfelt and how great this 5-star Google review was given by her to this funeral home, and how sensitive the situation is. And even though it was so sensitive, we still were able to have live dialogue and conversation with her. And again, look what it resulted to, is a loyal customer, a loyal fan of the funeral home. And she's just really appreciative of the funeral home. Another example here, obviously, but I wanted to show you this aspect of it, which is extremely important. What I was talking about is building local SEO. Our purpose here is to shoot you and to the top of the list here on Google, be number one in your market. And that's what Nelson Family Mortuary, even though they were only a few years old, and the funeral homes below them actually were close to 100 years old in the market, because of their Google review generation and our help in helping them build those and capturing those Google reviews, they're number one in their market on Google. And the reason that's important is because when someone's Googling a local funeral home in the area, Nelson Family Mortuary is the first to be called. So all these are losing business because they're constantly number one on Google. It actually has shown that over the past few years, they've been able to almost double their business from 87 calls to almost about 150 or so. Very, very important. You can see what's also important here on the left side is having recent reviews. When you look at restaurants or whatever, we obviously always look for reviews and seeing where they are. But when we look it up, we don't want to see 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 8 years ago. We want to see 4 days ago, 5 days ago, a week ago. Recent reviews, right? And that's what's important, is keeping them current. The power of reviews is so important. 93% of consumers say online reviews have an impact on their purchase decision. 68% of consumers are willing to pay up to 15% more for the same service if assured they'll have a better experience. And 97% of consumers that read online reviews trust them as much as recommendations from family and friends. So very important to have a good online reputation and presence, right? But let's go through some of Domani Care's statistics. The average funeral home has an average of 6.1 reviews on Google, with an average rating of 3.6 stars. With Domani Care funeral homes, our funeral homes average 4.8 stars, and right here at the top left it's 25.45 star reviews, and that's continuing to grow, as we know. But right here, just one review can boost conversions by 10%, and 100 reviews can boost conversions by as much as 37%. Domani Care has generated over 2,000 5-star reviews this year, so very efficient in how we capture those 5-star reviews. But 4 out of 5 funeral shoppers end up choosing the first funeral home they call. So when I was talking about being number one in their market on Google, it's very important that we shoot you to the top of the list, because we're losing business if you're not number 1 or 2 on that in your market. This is the last aspect of Domani Care. It's called Domani for Grief and Loss. And the reason we came up with this curriculum, and it is a curriculum, is because as we are messaging families, about 30 to 40% of the time, if they weren't asking about grief support specifically, they were expressing it in some way or fashion. You can see these statistics here, but 13 million people each year in the United States are affected by grief from the loss of a loved one. And below here, 40% of grievers meet the criteria for major depression 1 month after the loss. So we felt it was extremely important to get these families in front of professionals. And that's exactly what Domani for Grief and Loss is. But here's some examples just to back me up on what I was saying there. As we're messaging these families, here's what they would text back. Do you know of any bereavement groups? God bless all of you for what you do. This one, expressing their grief in some way or fashion. Grieving the loss of a child is probably one of the hardest things to go through. I miss them every day. I'll never get over it. I'm trying to find a way to live with it. asking specifically, could you give me the name, place, and number of the support group in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, Amy? So as we went back to these funeral homes and it would ask what kind of grief support material they have, if any at all, what they would provide us is maybe a phone number and a name of a grief counselor, which is fine, but the likelihood of them calling him or her was slim to none. And so we created Domani for Grief and Loss, which is a revolutionary online grief support platform that helps support the grieving process. It's just been an incredible site that's given to the family for free, courtesy of the funeral home. And I'm going to take you to the live site here just so you can see exactly what it looks like. But right here it says, welcome to Domani for Grief and Loss, the digital community providing specialized, empathetic, compassionate online courses, coaching, and therapy to support you and your family as you deal with the difficult loss of a loved one. Again, purpose of Domani Care is going above and beyond for what the family might expect. What's great about this program is, and John's going to talk about here, our co-founder, but you can access this from any device at any time, as long as you want to. And that's what's so great and powerful about this specific program for every family to have access to. Where we see a ton of traffic on this side are the late hours of night, the 9, 10, 11 p.m.s, where grief really sets in for the family. But I'm going to show this video real quick. It's of John LaFront. He's our co-founder and CEO. He's going to talk about the why behind Domani Care in general, but more specifically, the Domani for Grief and Loss.
10 years ago, I lost my father to brain cancer. He was 46 years old, had 7 young children. He fought cancer valiantly for 3 years. And while you might think that through that 3 years that we had enough time to adequately prepare ourselves for the inevitable grief and pain that we would feel, I've since learned that there was nothing we could have done to prepare us for that moment when we would eventually lose him. I was really naive in my grief. I thought, I have great family, friends, I have faith, and that would be enough to pull me through. In the end, though, the grief snuck in, and it actually hurt my relationship with those people that were around me. My wife finally sat me down and said, we need to find some help and support for you. We found a great therapist, thankfully, but I was embarrassed. I was intimidated at the process. It was so daunting. But in the end, my therapist was able to help me and helped me get ultimately on the path towards healing. Grief might be something that you think is rare or that passes quickly. That's actually not the case at all. There are actually 13 million people struggling with grief. If you don't get the kind of help and support that you need, grief can last for many years or more. That's where Domani for Grief comes into play. Domani for Grief is a platform that is built to help you get yourself back on the path towards healing. Grief is a normal part of life, and that's why Domani for Grief has come together to help make support materials more accessible than ever before. When you sign up for Domani for Grief, you'll have unlimited access to 30 plus free courses, a support group, and access to specialized therapists and coaches that are all there to help you get unstuck. In the end, Domani for Grief helps pair you with the right people and the right resources to set goals and ultimately get you on the right path towards a healthier grief experience. I regret not addressing my grief sooner. This platform removes those barriers and helps give you access to this content, courses, and material so that you can access it anytime, any place, and from any device. Take the first step towards a healthier grief experience by signing up for Domani for Grief today.
Perfect. Such a great why behind this program, right? We all need grief help, even though we think that we don't, or even if we think we don't or we do, it's really necessary after a loss. But just to recap, this site will offer dozens of free online courses and material to help support the grieving process for every family. They'll have 24/7 message-based grief coaching and support. And of course, they're all done by specialized and trained grief therapists across the country, support that they'll have access to. But that's it for this demo Really appreciate you being on with me. I'm going to go through just the final slide here that goes over the pricing. But when we looked at some of the aftercare options out there, we wanted to not only offer it so that it was a no-brainer to the funeral home or cemetery, but even provide more value. And I think we've done that with the personalization and the live text monitoring, the Google review generation, and the grief support platform. But even though there's technology that drives these efficiencies, there are humans behind it to not lose that personal touch. And that's really what sets us apart. You can see here, pretty simple, but if your firm is 600 calls or below, it is $350 a month. Anything above that mark, 600 calls or above, is just $7 a contact. And again, a lot of the options out there you'll see are $15 to $20 a contact. So we're well below that mark and being affordable. And so try us out. It's an incredibly powerful program. You'll see that quickly. It doesn't take much to implement. Again, it's a 15 to 20 minute onboarding phone call to get started. And we implement it. It's very simple to gather the data. There isn't much that your funeral home staff has to do. It's very simple. A lot of times it can just be automated to where we're just being sent an email every couple of weeks of your client information. So very simple to implement, very little work on your guys' part. We do the majority of it. So we are really looking forward to showing you how powerful this is. But if you have any questions, please email me, samuel@thedomanigroup.com, or you can call or text me, 480-298-7655 right here, as you can see on the screen. Thank you for following along. Really excited to show you our program and show you how we can make a difference in your firm.